easily crowded together.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My phone is recording the service for people who are not here this morning. I just want to take a huge selfie of take a huge selfie of all of you. Good morning and welcome to the Community Church of Chapel Hill, Unitarian Universalist. I think I'm supposed to take my mask off while I'm speaking. We're learning all these new things. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you arrived at this beloved place, you are welcome here. Special welcome this morning to our guests and visitors. If you're visiting us this morning, welcome to our first in-person service after being remote since March of 2020. There's a special note for you, welcome guests and visitors, inside the order of service. I want to give a few announcements about how we are how we're arranging things this morning. On this side of the sanctuary to my left, this is the non-physically distanced seating, so people can sit wherever they're comfortable. And then on my right, this is the socially distanced seating, and the way I had kind of hopefully set this up was that people can sit not on the blue tape. The idea is that we sit, the blue tape marks the spaces between people seating. There's also, if you need extra space, there's also our balcony is open this morning. And so if it fills up, you're welcome to go to the balcony. We're going to be doing our social hour outside today. We're going to try to exit through that door. Right now we have a little bit of a moisture problem in the church commons, and we are kind of closing that, but if you pass through that, make sure you pass through, don't congregate in there. Coffee hour will be held both in the courtyard as well as behind the building. In the courtyard, it is masks optional, and behind, in the grassy area behind the Jones building, that's going to be a masked area. So depending on where you feel more comfortable. We're also going to be serving water because we redid some of the kitchen and we're still working on getting those coffee machines back and working. So we hope to be able to do coffee soon. Our offering this morning, we're not going to be passing baskets back in the door that you came through. There are, by the hymnals and by Lisa Ebner, who is our greeter this morning, there is some baskets for the offertory, and so we invite you to give generously to support the work of this church. And then finally, I was here yesterday helping set up, and we have new art in the sanctuary. The new art is by our own member, Marnie Goldschlag. And really grateful for these wonderful fabric pieces and paintings. And there is, in the back of the sanctuary, there should be some pamphlets with some more information about the art. I think that's about everything that I have in mind. So without further ado, I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and join in singing joyfully hymn number 361, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In.
Today will be
call to worship this morning was written by the Reverend Buice for the reopening of the Tennessee Valley Unitarian Universalist Church in May of this year. It's a reading that invites your participation. For each line that I read, I invite you to respond, "We are the church." We are the single person who has been living in isolation for over a year.
We are the church.
We are the parents whose children are too young for the vaccine.
We are the church.
We are the empty nesters longing for companionship.
We are the church.
We are the newly vaccinated teenager eager for the youth groups.
We are the church.
We are the elderly in nursing homes longing for visitors.
We are the church.
We are the healthcare professionals and frontline workers, weary and in need of a rest.
We are the church.
And we are the ones who have been resting in place, bursting with energy.
We are the church.
We are the ones who want to be able to sing together again.
We are the church.
We are the members of the small group ministries longing to reunite.
We are the church.
We are the immunocompromised.
We are the church.
We are the infants born this year.
We are the church.
And we are the memories of those who died this year.
We are the church.
We are those celebrating new freedoms.
We are the church.
We are those grieving our losses.
We are the church.
We are the ones who are together in our building at this moment.
We are the church.
And we are the ones who will watch the recorded service online.
We are the church.
We are, all of us, the ones committed to building a free faith where no one is left behind.
We are the church.
Our chalice lighting this morning is in your order of service, if you care to read that. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired by our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and every miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other.
Look at all those beautiful masked faces. When you will be feeling small, when tears are in your eyes, I will dry them all. I'm on your side. Times get rough, and friends just can't be found. Like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down. Like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down. When you're down and out, has come, and pain is all around, like a bridge over troubled water. I will lay down like a bridge over troubled water. I will lay me down. Sail on, silker, sail on by. Your time has come to shine. All your dreams are on their way. See how they shine. If you need a friend, I'm a sailing breath behind, like a bridge over troubled water. I will lead you like a bridge over troubled water. I will lead you.
Both minister and videographer. We are going to do joys and sorrows this morning, and I want to just give a little of a refresher for joys and sorrows, that this is a time in our service for sharing either the deep joys or the deep sorrows of our lives. In a moment, we're going to have a time where if you have a joy or a sorrow to share, you're going to be invited to come forward, place a stone, and then into the microphone say your name and briefly, a sentence or two, your joy or your sorrow. Since we are a congregation of both people gathering in person, of people, some feel comfortable coming up here and some don't. There are several joys and sorrows that were sent to me to be read, and we're going to do those first and hold those, and then we'll have a time. So if you are planning to do a joy or a sorrow, for a joy or sorrow in your life, you invite you to come down the side ramps and share. First, we're going to do 3. First stone is placed this morning is placed by Salem McNee. Salem writes that we found out this week that my dad's prostate cancer, Salem's dad's prostate cancer, seems to be back, which means tests and decisions ahead. Salem would appreciate so much all of our good thoughts and healing energy from church friends. Sue Brewer, and I see Sue here this morning. Yes, there's Sue. Sue writes, my husband Don and I will celebrate our 60th wedding anniversary this week. shares that used to be quite rare, but as people live longer, it may become less rare. Much has happened in the world and in our lives since July 1961. And I am so very glad to have shared all of this time with Dawn. And Pat Smith and Susan McDaniel asked me to place a stone. Sarah Smith, daughter of Pat and Susan, died peacefully and surrounded by family and friends Tuesday, June 9th, of complications of metastatic breast cancer after a 3-year battle. Sarah is survived by her children, Harper, 17, and Dayla, 14, as well as Carlos, her longtime partner, her father, Jim, stepmother, Lindy, 2 brothers, as well as uncles, aunts, cousins, and many, many friends. Sarah was a dedicated Spanish teacher, widely loved by her students, and a disco party as a celebration of her life will be held on her 50th birthday in August in Crested Butte, Colorado. We hold Sarah's memory and we hold Susan and Pat in our hearts.
My name is Caroline Sherman. Today I ask for your blessings for my mother, Ann Sherman, who is suffering more from memory loss, and it's going to change her living status. It's a time for lots of, she's confused and nervous, so please hold our family in your prayers.
My name is Mary LeMay, and I am here in sore in body and elated in spirit, having come back from a camping trip where I slept on the ground on an air mattress, but nevertheless on the hard ground in the sawtooth forest in the center of Idaho. And it was just wonderful.
Good morning, my name is Amy Maddox, and I place the stone of sorrow for my mother's cousin, Ed Rogers, who passed from cancer. We are celebrating his life.
Hi, my name is Jeannie Jensen. This is my first time attending the UU Church, but I wanted to share the joy that I felt witnessing Wednesday morning, the birth of my 3rd grandchild, my 6-year-old grandchild, and I watched her mother give birth in a bathtub.
Good morning. I'm Donna Washington Clibino, and I have an amazing joy this morning. This week we moved my mother, who has Alzheimer's, into a memory care facility, and she is incredibly happy to be there.
Hi, I'm Jenna Kaizen. This is a stone of joy among concern. So I have joy that I have the summer off as a teacher and can drive up frequently, once a month here in the summer to visit my mom, who just got sent home yesterday after almost 3 months in and out of the hospital and rehab. She's already disabled with one leg that doesn't work. She had shoulder surgery and then having all these weird symptoms. Turns out she has congestive heart failure and metastatic ovarian cancer. She has just had her second round of chemo and is feeling good, and I'm excited to see her at the end of this week.
Hi, I'm Michael Lane.
And I'm Selden Holt. We are placing our stones for Abby Overton and Ed Overton and the Overton family. They're dear friends of ours. Abby had surgery back in March for a mass in her brain and has been in UNC hospitals since. They're now looking for a rehabilitation space for her to be, but just asking for your support for the whole family.
Hi, I'm Eileen Reagan, and I'm placing a stone in honor of my granddaughter who was born October 6th, but I haven't seen you since then. It was my great joy to be present at her birth, and I'm just loving every minute of her life. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Clark Parnell, and in November, my partner and I welcomed our third baby girl, baby Gillian. And yeah, she's doing great, and her sissies adore her. And then my other joy is that somewhere during the pandemic, I reached candidate status for the Ministerial Fellowship Committee for that stuff. So, thank you.
Good morning, my name is Miranda Strawell, and I place a stone for my grandmother, Peggy George, who died on Friday at the age of 93 from cancer. And my family would appreciate your prayers. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gray Brown, and I lost my career early on in the pandemic in that March. And I'm happy to say that on Tuesday of this week, I start my 6th job since the pandemic started. There have been a lot more interviews and applications, but this is job number 6, and it's gonna stick. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Martha Brown, and in June of this year, my husband Mark Bayless and I celebrated 33 years together.
The final stone is placed for all the joys and sorrows that were not spoken this morning. Let us take a moment to hold in our hearts each other in this community. We hold in our hearts those who are mourning the loss of family and friends, those who have lost a grandparent, a child, a dear friend. We hold in our hearts each person caring for a loved one who is ill, facing their own health challenges. We hold in our hearts the comings and the goings of this community. And we hold those who've welcomed new children, new grandchildren into this world. In this spirit of openness, let us lift our joys and our sorrows for each other, and let those mingle with our cares and our concerns for the wider world of which we are a part. In the spirit of all of these joys and sorrows, let us hold in our hearts a few moments of silence together. I invite us to join our voices together in song. We're going to sing together Spirit of Life, which is hymn number 123. We're going to remain seated as we sing, and we will sing it through once.
Responsive reading this morning is found in the back of your hymnals, number 661. Please read the italicized print. The heart knoweth. We have a great deal more kindness than is ever spoken.
The whole human family is saved with an element of love and divine fear.
How many persons we meet in houses whom we scarcely speak to, whom yet we honor and who honor us.
How many we see in the street or sit in church, whom the sadly we warmly rejoice to be with.
Read the language of these wandering eye-beams.
The heart knoweth.
So good to be here with you this morning. In this familiar place, in this familiar community, in this familiar act of worship, and also in this place that is different, having been enlarged since we last gathered here, and that new part's going to be opening up soon. In this community that has changed with new members joining and longtime members departing. In this community changed by death as well as by birth. And in this act of worship, each time familiar and novel, it is so good to be here with you this morning. Read the language of these wandering eye-beams. The heart knoweth. If you would permit me to revisit for just a few moments, way back in March of 2020, in those early days of the pandemic, the first homily that I delivered all alone in this sanctuary, preaching just to my cell phone camera, was on that same text that George just read. I remember back then going to the grocery store, way back in the early days of the pandemic, before the Centers for Disease Control had even begun to recommend the wearing of masks. And as I walked around that grocery store, I observed being stared at, glared at. I observed the other shoppers in the store tensing up, backing away from me, and keeping distance from each other as well. It wasn't just me. They were staring and glaring at each other and keeping distance from one another. And truth be told, I was also tensing up, avoiding, backing away from everyone else. I was staring and glaring too. Remember this experience? You lived in that state for a long time. And that first, earliest experience of how the pandemic was already changing us somehow brought to mind, because I'll let you in on a secret, I'm a church nerd, and sometimes words from readings kind of pop into my mind. That reading from the back of our hymnal by Ralph Waldo Emerson, read the language of these wandering eye-beams. And in the grocery store that day, and in the months to follow, the language of those wandering eye-beams said, "Stay away from me." Of course, Emerson was writing about something entirely different. The reading that George read is actually taken from the opening lines of Emerson's essay on friendship. These lines describe regarding the fellow members of our human family with open affection and blithe spirit. The whole human family is bathed with an element of love, like a fine ether. How many we see in the street or sit with in church, whom warmly we rejoice to be with. And in his essay on friendship, Emerson implies a vision of human community that is inclusive rather than exclusive, democratic rather than cliquish and caste-bound, and abundantly lavish with human affection rather than stingy. Describes an openness to the spirit of others. Emerson even concludes that essay with these words: "The essence of friendship is entireness, a total magnanimity and trust. Friendship treats its object as a god, that it may deify both." Friendship treats its object as a god, that it may deify both. When we see another person as divine, their divinity is reflected in us. Or to put it in the negative, when we see another person as less than divine, we ourselves reflect something less than divinity. And so I think back to those early days of the pandemic, that particular afternoon in the grocery store, when the wandering eye-beams were not wandering eye-beams of love bathing me in a fine ether. And when truth be told, the stares and glares I was sending out were not exactly bathing other people in love either. And upon reconsideration, I have to wonder, if what made that experience so striking to me doesn't reflect just a little bit of my own privilege. After all, I tend to walk through the world without being on the receiving end of fearful, suspicious, accusing, and hostile looks. After all, I tend to walk through the world without fearing assault or harassment. There is a lot of privilege involved with being pretty certain I will feel welcomed by the world pretty much wherever I am. And I think we can all agree that it is a vision of our faith, a vision of our Unitarian Universalist faith, to move towards a world in which all of our wandering I-beams regard each other and all with the same warmth of welcome, the same embrace, regardless of race or color or nationality or gender expression, regardless of the space we occupy or the way we move through the world, or the configuration of family with whom we move through the world. I want you to hear these words from my very good colleague, Reverend Robin Bartlett, who serves a church in the middle of Massachusetts. Robin wrote these words a few weeks ago. She says, the most important work from this year will be cultivating the grace and forgiveness it will take to no longer look upon one another as heartless pestilence. That's a lasting damage to undo. The most important work from this year will be cultivating the grace and the forgiveness it will take to no longer look upon one another as heartless pestilence. That is lasting damage to undo. And I'm preaching to myself here, by the way. And please don't think for even a second that I am in any way knocking all of the things that we do and did to try to keep ourselves and each other safe. I'm not talking about masking or physical distancing or isolating or refraining from meeting up with loved ones or getting groceries delivered or all of those related habits that we had to learn and practice so diligently over this past time. But what I am talking about is the social and psychological and spiritual consequence of spending this past time having a script play in our lives and in our psyches, a script that says that other people are fundamentally threatening and dangerous. Heartless pestilence. And there is some trauma for our psyches and our souls to work through. And this is spiritual work. As we emerge from the pandemic, and I believe that we are emerging from the pandemic, there's a lot of speculation about what's going to change in our society. Will the way we work change? Will education change? Will travel change? Will the way we congregate change? And as a minister, I can confess that in those lonely moments, part of me wonders and worries whether the way we gather to worship and learn and serve in religious community might be permanently changed by a time of global disruption. But rather than offer some commentary on the forms and technologies of how we gather in society and community, I want to focus instead on that spiritual work, the grace and the forgiveness, the welcome and acceptance that is the work of this time. If Emerson says that it is when we see others as divine, it is then that divinity is reflected in us. What does that mean for our living? On one level, this understanding confirms for me that the work of anti-oppression is in fact spiritual work. During the pandemic, one of the areas of our church life that stayed the most vital and vibrant, in fact grew and bloomed, was our anti-racism and our justice work. We had more people participating regularly in new offerings like the 29-day Racial Equity Challenge than at any other time I can remember. Our immigrant justice work expanded This work allows for a reflection of divinity. We showed up for voting rights, a reflection of Emerson's democratic vision of community. And a ministry in our own congregation worked to promote our own covenant, urging us to gather in ways that allows us to recognize each other's divine nature in our own shining faces. The fear in our times continues to be a very real threat to the goal of world community and to our own spirits. We as a society emerging from this time need to contend with anti-Asian hatred, with anti-Semitism, homophobia, with anti-immigrant, and with anti-Black racism. We are called to live in ways that promotes the wellness of all. So may we emerge from this time of trauma, and may we emerge to celebration, to a celebration of the entire human family. May we honor one another, and in our living and our loving, display that the heart knoweth. The heart knoweth. So good to be with you this morning. And I invite us to sing together our closing hymn of the morning. It is number 128, For All That Is Our Life, and I'm going to invite you to rise in body or in spirit as we sing together.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Before we sing Shalom, I want to take just a few moments for a few more announcements. Once again, we're at the exit over there, and then also if you wanted to pass through the commons, we're just asking people not to congregate in the commons because of a little moisture problem there. Before we end, I want to just take a moment to thank our musicians this morning, Kristin Trangsrud and Danny Gotham, and Eileen, who joined us at the fiddle for our gathering music. So we are, as a community, we're still working out these wandering I-beams in our lives, not just here, but in our lives. And so for Shalom, we don't want anyone to feel compelled to join hands. And so how we're going to do it, and I want you to listen to your own heart, and I want you to respect each other's boundaries. If you're a person who is not as comfortable holding hands right now, I invite you to put your hands over your heart. And if you're a person who is open to holding hands, you can just put your hands down like this and see if anybody wants to take it, and that's okay. But we're no peer pressure here. We are a welcoming community of consent, and I invite you to join in singing our closing song, our traditional closing song, Shalom.